November 2nd, 1917. A controversial pledge was made by the British. Just 67 words, but it would upend the lives of thousands of Palestinians and would spark a century of blood feud between Jews and Arabs. The conflict between Israel and Palestine revolves around Jews and Palestinian Arabs, competing for the same piece of land, Palestine. It was located in the Middle East, surrounded by Lebanon, Syria, present-day Jordan, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea.
Before 1917, under the Ottoman Empire, Arabs lived side by side with Jews on the lands of Palestine.
In 1917, Arthur Balfour, British Foreign Secretary at that time, wrote the Balfour Declaration, containing these 67 words, which was a letter addressed to Lionel Walter Rothschild, a prominent Jewish leader.
His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing should be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country.
The Balfour Declaration was problematic because it made no explicit promise of assisting the Arabs of Palestine, who at that time formed a majority of something like 95% of the entire population at the end of the Ottoman Empire. Instead, there was the only commitment made of a political nature was to a Jewish national home, and there was only a reference to social and cultural rights for the other inhabitants who weren't even named as Arab or Muslim or Christian.
In short, the Balfour Declaration pledged to support the Jews in establishing a national home in Palestine, with no additional provisions to the rights of those already living there. But for some Jewish communities outside of Palestine then, the British promise filled them with hopefulness for the future.
Whenever I read the Balfour Declaration to my students in a Jewish history class, I would feel myself start to cry. I don't want to cry in front of my students. But there's something deeply moving to me about the Balfour Declaration to this day. And at the time that the Balfour Declaration was issued, Jews rejoiced all over the world.
In the 1880s, most of the Jews in the world lived in the Russian Empire or in Romania. And these are parts of the world where there was a good deal of anti-Jewish feeling. Jews had limited economic opportunities.
There's been always a sense in Jewish history that without sovereignty, without security, there's vulnerability. And the promise of Zionism was to have a state we would be secure.
Zionism is a word that was invented in the early 1890s. That is a belief that Jews comprise a nation, that they share common fate, common history, common ideals, common values, common cultures, and that they need to develop some kind of national home.
It all started with Theodor Herzl. The Austro-Hungarian Jewish journalist wrote Der Judenstaat at the height of anti-Semitism, an 86-page pamphlet that popularized Zionism. The pamphlet calls for a creation of the Jewish state as a solution to the Jewish problem.
So before 1917, Jews lived in diaspora, scattered around the world, everywhere from India to China to South America and Africa and North America, Europe. Jews lived everywhere.
Jews found themselves persecuted and endangered all over the place. The whole purpose of Zionism was to provide a home for millions of persecuted Jews. So Zionism presented itself as a possibility for a safe haven.
So, why did the British promise to support the establishment of Palestine as a national home to the Jews? You see, just before the Balfour Declaration was written, World War I broke out.
The Balfour Declaration was a result of strong lobbying by the Zionist movement that started out in the late 19th century.
I think that the British were willing to be lobbied.
During World War I, the Allied powers were on one side and the Central powers were on the other. In order to win, the British wanted Russia to stay in the war. The British also wanted the United States, which was then maintaining a neutral stance, to join them.
The British had an exaggerated idea that Russian Jews somehow controlled the Russian government. And they thought that these Jews could influence whether or not Russia would stay in the war on the same side as Britain. Now, Russian Jews didn't have that kind of power. And the same thing with the United States. The British thought that the American Jews had the power to help accelerate the entry of the United States of America into World War I. But again, Jews didn't really have that power. So the British had exaggerated views of Jewish abilities, Jewish wealth, and Jewish power. So they're promising Palestine to the Jews, saying the Ottoman Empire will fall apart.
So, while Britain was not even in control of Palestine then, they made an offer, with the idea that once the Ottoman Empire was soundly defeated, their territories, including Palestine, would be split among the war victors. The Balfour Declaration was Britain's way of winning over the Jews, hoping that the Jews would influence their leaders. But secretly, the British were playing both sides. The Ottoman Turks were also involved in the war, and they were fighting against the Allies, which included the British.
So, in 1915, Sir Henry McMahon, British High Commissioner in Egypt, and Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca, exchanged a series of 10 letters, known as the McMahon-Hussein Correspondence, with this letter being the most important.
He promised to recognize and support the independence of the Arabs if the Arabs assisted in opposing the Ottoman Turks and pushing them out, a move that would weaken Britain's enemy. With British support assured, the Arabs launched their rebellion from Mecca the following year.
One of the jokes goes that the British Empire was an empire on which the sun never set because God wouldn't trust the British in the dark.
The British only cemented their unsavory reputation when they promised Arab leaders in 1915 their support for a pan-Arab nation that would include Palestine, and just 2 years later promised Palestine to the Jews as well.
For the whole interwar period, the priority really for Britain is to do that which is in their own interest. Although they had made these promises during the war, both to Zionism and to the Palestinian Arabs in terms of self-determination.
Then, in 1918, World War I ended. The Allies emerged as victors.
Britain and France divides up the Middle East according to their own interests.
This whole region, which includes Transjordan and Iraq, was to come under British control, including Palestine, breaking the promise to Hussein. This is the mandate for Palestine, drawn up after the war. It was issued by the League of Nations, formalizing British rule over Palestine. But under Article 22, this rule was meant to be temporary, until such time that the people in the region were able to stand alone. At the same time, it gave the British the responsibility to secure the establishment of the Jewish national home and facilitate Jewish immigration into Palestine. Though Israel would not exist for years to come, Jewish immigration slowly flowed into Palestine, accelerating at the dawn of the 1930s.
You have the rise of European fascism, particularly in Germany. You have the threats against European Jews, and many European Jews are now trying to find a way out of Europe and find safety elsewhere.
As the Nazis took power in Germany in 1933, the persecution of the Jews in the country worsened, from the boycotting of Jewish shops, explicitly holding signages telling people to shop at German shops instead, to the burning of Jewish books. Between 1933 to 1936, over 160,000 Jews immigrated to Palestine.
They saw these European Jews coming not as refugees to integrate into their society, but coming as refugees to replace them and to create a Jewish state instead of a Palestinian state.
This inflamed the Arabs in Palestine. In this demonstration in 1933, for example, the Arabs were specifically protesting against Jewish immigration. But Jewish immigration persisted. This was 1938 at Haifa in Palestine. That year, over 12,000 Jews immigrated there to set up their permanent homes.
So from 1936 to 1939, Palestinian Arabs rose in rebellion.
When the rebellion broke out and had a huge impact, the British ended the revolt with about 100,000 troops. We're talking about in a population of about 1.5 million. So you can imagine there's an immense amount of British military might applied. Thousands of people imprisoned, hanged, executed.
But Britain also responded with a political promise.
Then comes the notorious British White Paper of 1939.
This white paper was released 4 months before World War II. The British aimed to limit the Jewish immigration quota to just 75,000 in total over the next 5 years. And after this period, no further Jewish immigration would be permitted, unless the Arabs of Palestine consented.
My grandmother, my 3 aunts were murdered by the Nazis. They could have come to Palestine had it not been for the White Paper.
And, in an unprecedented twist, the document declared that it was not the British government's policy that Palestine should become a Jewish state. This was in contrast to the earlier Balfour Declaration, which said that Palestine should be a national home for the Jewish people.
One of the reasons the Balfour Declaration is worded so loosely is that it can be interpreted in different ways, and that it is quite hard to be bound by it as a legal document. It is simply a very short letter written by one elderly gentleman to another elderly gentleman, expressing the government's wish that something should take place.
Then came the outbreak of World War II in September 1939.
The Second World War more or less froze this conflict.
In the 1940s, many European Jews faced with immense persecution attempted to flee into Palestine. To keep the peace with Arabs, the British stuck to their guns, throwing Jewish refugees who were trying to enter illegally into detention camps. But it sparked a Jewish backlash, because by 1945, it had already emerged that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust in Europe. In 1946, a Zionist terrorist organization bombed the King David Hotel. At that time, the hotel housed the British civil and military headquarters.
So in 1945-46, the terrorist activities against the British killed hundreds and hundreds of British soldiers. And finally, Britain decided they'd had enough.
By early 1947, Britain said to the new United Nations, we wish to give up our League of Nations mandate over Palestine, and we're turning the problem over to you, United Nations, to determine what the future of Palestine should be. The United Nations then created the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, made up of members of 11 different UN member states, to tour Palestine and to come up with recommendations for its future.
These 11 countries were seen as neutral. The assumption was that they would be impartial. Their solution was the UN Partition Plan, otherwise known as Resolution 181, dividing Palestine into 2, a Jewish state and an Arab state, and putting the holy city of Jerusalem under international control. However,
none of the 11 members of this committee had any background in Palestine and knew very little about it.
After 30 years of intense Jewish immigration into Palestine, the Jews had gone to around 1/3 of the entire population, but were to receive 55% of the entire territory, including most of the coastal strip, which included the main cities of Haifa and Jaffa, and with it the new city of Tel Aviv that had been built in recent decades, and also the Negev Desert extending to Eilat and the Red Sea. And the Arab community, which represented the 2/3 majority, was to receive about 45% of the land. But then they also said, why should we as the 2/3 majority end up with less than even half of the country, including some of the least economically viable and productive parts of the country?
It was very much framed with looking for a solution for the hundreds of thousands of Jewish refugees, internally displaced refugees in Europe, those who survived the death camps of Nazism and were still in camps, right? Now, when this was happening, countries like Canada, the United States, they were not interested in opening their doors for Jewish immigration. So in creating a Jewish state with that in mind, they wanted to provide as much land as possible for that state to grow in the future, to be able to absorb more and more immigrants from Europe.
The Jews rejoiced and accepted the partition plan, while the Palestinian Arabs rejected it. Even with the issue unresolved, the British withdrew their troops in 1948, as their mandate over Palestine terminated. With the British gone,
at 4:06 on the afternoon of May 14, 1948, in the main gallery of the Museum of Art in Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion read the Proclamation of Independence to 13 other members of the Israel Provisional National Council.
Israel declared independence, claiming the lands drafted in the UN partition plan. The very next day, 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, invaded the Palestinian territory and attacked Israeli forces and settlements. But Zionist fighters repelled the attempted invasion. That became known as the First Arab-Israeli War. The attempted Arab invasion, as well as the subsequent Israeli victory and territorial expansion, sparked a massive exodus of Arabs from territories under Israeli rule. Some out of fear, others forced. An event known as Nakba.
Nakba means catastrophe. And in this case, we're not talking about a natural disaster like a tsunami or an earthquake, but a man-made catastrophe. My own family in 1948 left from the town of Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. What my parents told me is that Zionist forces who'd occupied the hills above, right above, were rolling barrels of dynamite down among the Arab houses. And so, of course, people like my grandparents were terrified and rented a pickup truck and put their things on, and the whole family, there were 7 children and my grandparents.
The end result is, by late 1948, early 1949, about 2/3 or so of the Arab population of Palestine has either been expelled from Palestine or has fled in advance of the fighting.
Nakba refers to how Israelis took over more than 500 villages and 10 cities from the Palestinian Arabs during the war, forcefully displacing them.
Israel made a very determined decision not to allow any of the Palestinian refugees to be able to return, because it wanted to be able to preserve its demographic Jewish majority in Israel.
The war lasted for about a year, ending in 1949, with Israel signing 4 separate armistice agreements with Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria.
When the dust settles and there are armistice agreements signed in 1949, mediated by the United Nations, Israel has expanded its boundaries.
Under the 1947 UN partition plan, Israel was allocated 55% of the land. But by 1949, the State of Israel now had 77% of the land. It not only kept the land allocated by the UN partition plan, but also gained these new territories like Galilee and West Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Egypt took control of the Gaza Strip, and Jordan annexed the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, which houses the Jewish Quarter and the Old City. For nearly 2 decades after the war, armistices were held, but none of them led to a real peace treaty. There were persistent skirmishes on Israel borders by Palestinian guerrilla groups based in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. In June 1967, Israel caught wind of the mobilization of Arab forces. It launched a preemptive air assault on Egypt.
I was 12 years old. Schools ended suddenly, and I was very pleased, of course, because we didn't have to do our final exams.
That was the beginning of the Six-Day War. Israel was pitted against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. Despite the odds, Israel prevailed.
Of course, it was all over in no time, and suddenly there we were. Instead of Palestine being liberated, as many of us thought and hoped on the first day, it was the other way around entirely, that all the remaining parts of Palestine had gone for good, and that the Arab armies had been decimated and defeated in the most humiliating way.
It only took Israel 6 days to conquer a tremendous amount of land.
After the Six-Day War, Israel occupied the rest of Palestinian territories, namely the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, which was previously under Jordan, and Gaza Strip, which was then controlled by Egypt.
Israel also gained the Golan Heights from Syria and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. The Sinai Peninsula was eventually returned.
So, flush with victory in 1967, Israel then began to contemplate how to be able to hold on to its conquest. And this is when the very first Israeli settlements began to be planned and placed in East Jerusalem and the West Bank.
Now, this is illegal under international law.
The strategic thought behind the settlements was that if you began to place Jewish Israeli civilians into the occupied territory, they will then help to establish both the demographic presence of Jews in these occupied lands, as well as being able to create and place down an Israeli flag to establish permanent Israeli sovereignty over these lands as well.
Under Geneva Convention 4 in 1949, an occupying power cannot transfer its own civilians into the territory it occupies. But Israel continued to encourage Jewish settlements in the decades that followed. The expanding Jewish settlements also broke up Palestinian territories into small, impractical pieces, making the formation of an independent Palestinian state even more challenging.